Thank you, Kevin. As introduced by Kevin, I came from Seoul, Korea. I'm Kim Dong-jin, and I'm so glad. Dr. Hulbert, probably some of you might have heard his name, but very rarely. So most of Koreans do not know. Of course, Americans do not know him. But I have been lecturing about him for about 10 years, and now some Koreans know about him. So this is first time my presentation to the people in the United States about an American who was great human being to me. So I'm so glad to be here tonight. Accordingly, I give really thank you for your time tonight, and also I really give my sincere thanks to Korea Society for this opportunity. I'm given about 1 hour, less or slightly more. But to really explain to you about this gentleman, I think I may need 6 hours to talk about him. Okay, so 60 minutes. I'll try to finish it in the time given, and also get across to you who really he was. Okay. I mean, since I have known him when I was in college 35 years ago, I really was fascinated by his whole life and also by his spirit and his accomplishment as well. Then, who he was. So all the time, if someone asks me, some people say, oh, he was a missionary, or some people say he was a teacher, some people say he was an independent patriot. So I didn't know how to describe him, but I labeled him who loved Korea more than Koreans. That's one sense, because his whole life mainly for Korea. But also at the same time, I'm calling him, he was the man of justice, integrity, and humanity. I think he really has courage for justice and international comity. Also, he has big heart, loving the poor and helping the weak. And also, he was so intelligent with ample knowledge on many things. But he never abused his knowledge or intelligence for his own interest. So you will see through my presentation why I'm calling him like that. Let's take a look, who he was. He was born in 1863 in New Haven, Vermont. This is during Civil War. And of course, he went to schools there. And in 1884, he graduated from Dartmouth College. And after graduation, he, in 1884 summer, came down to New York to join Union Theological Seminary. But at the time, Union Theological Seminary, 3 years, I don't know now how long you have to study. But after 2 years, he left the school to go to Korea. I will elaborate more later. His parents, his father was the Congregational Church minister. And also, his father was the president of Middlebury College. I understand from Kevin that college still exists as a good school. Okay? And his mother, also great-granddaughter of the founder of Dartmouth. So this means like he was grown with the spirit of Christianity and Puritanism. And I found from his book, he's saying, the family precept was character is more fundamental than victory. This really, I like this phrase very, very much. This, okay. Then he was all the time very passionate for many things and very adventurous. And also, he read many books, especially in college. He read all Shakespeare's works and Greek classics like that, and liked music and also sports, football and tennis also in Seoul. He played tennis in Seoul all the time. Then over here, one thing I can find, he really was raised perfectly from both home and school education. To me, his parents taught him justice and love with the spirit of Christianity. And school also provided for, say, knowledge and balanced thinking, that kind of things school provided. Okay. This is the picture at the graduation of Dartmouth. I found this picture from Dartmouth Library, which was sealed in the sealed envelope. So unless I find this, nobody found this picture. So 2 or 3, I visited Dartmouth libraries. I found this picture. This is family picture. I got this from his descendants. In the middle, his father, and on right, middle on right, his mother. Below them, the Dr. Hulbert, far. I'm sorry. Okay. This is Dr. Hulbert and Mrs. Hulbert of the family picture. Now I'll introduce you about what he was. But before going into his accomplishment, we may need some education on U.S.-Korea relation. Far above, 1866, this was first encounter between United States and Korea. U.S. ship wrecked and landed in Hwanghae-do. At the time, very amicably, they went back. Korea treated crews very well. And 2 months later, August 1866, this was disaster. U.S. ship General Sherman that landed just at the mouth of Pyongyang City. Daedong River, so where the General Sherman anchored, and they demanded, opening and exchange of commerce like that. But Korean government, at the time, totally closed the country to Western society. So, no, we have no intention to deal with you guys. So you please leave this country. This is Korean territory, Korean Ocean. So asked them to leave, but they didn't leave. Also, the merchants, according to the record, those crews and on the ship, they acted very barbarously. So there was a big sort of a fight between the Korea and U.S. At the time, Korean government through the soldiers put the fire on the raft and sent the raft to the ship. So ship got fire, burnt, and ship sunk. So all people got killed there. So U.S. was very upset. So same year, December, Admiral Schifelt, the U.S. dispatched to investigate this to China. So he investigated this. Then let's see, the 1875, U.S. Navy, the warship anchored Ganghwa-do, now nearby Incheon Airport. So they came to Ganghwa-do and demanded for the opening of the country. But at the time, still Korea refused to do this. So this was a sort of war. Then about more than 500 people, Koreans killed, versus only one U.S. soldier casualty at the time. And 1880, U.S. government dispatched Admiral Schifelt again to China to negotiate with Korean government for diplomatic tie. This was 1880. Then he was very persistent. Koreans at the beginning, refused, but later accepted his proposal. So 1882, there was the agreement between United States of America and Korea. This is first treaty with Western country for Korea after Japan. Then that treaty was signed in Incheon at the time called Jaemulpo. So then how Korea could accept a U.S. proposal at the time? Admiral Schifelt, when he investigated General Sherman case, he felt Koreans were not that wrong at the time. So he had good feeling about Koreans. So his personal the emotion really resulted in this U.S.-Korea first treaty. And 1883, ratified by Congress, and U.S. Ambassador, I think at the time called the minister, because legation office, minister arrived in Korea 1883. And 1883, that U.S. legation office, they recommended Korean king send some Korean delegation to United States so to look at what the United States looks like. So we call it in Korean language 보빙사. So study tour group to United States. That came to United States and looked around United States for about 8 months. Then they came back to Korea. And what they recommended to King Gojong at the time, we need the school like in America, especially like U.S. military academy. This really raises illness for the country, so this is good to have, Western style school. Then the king approved in 1884. So they're supposed to have school opened in later part of 1884 or early part of 85. And for your information, first medical missionary we call Horace Allen. So he is first missionary, but he came to Korea at the end of 1884, but not as a missionary, as the medical officer for U.S. legation office in Seoul. But missionaries came 1885, Underwood, Minister Underwood, and also Appenzeller. They both from Presbyterian and Methodist, they came to Korea. Okay. Then let me go back. So then what happened then school? School is supposed to be opened in 1884, but there was a political coup in Korea. 갑신정변. Koreans probably understand this. So political coup. That's why this has been postponed for 2 years. So 1886, Dr. Hulbert came to Korea instead of 1884. So these peoples, embassy people and medical the doctors and missionaries, teachers, they are first Americans who landed in Korea until, say, 1890s. This is the Korea-U.S. treaty. If you look at the bottom in English, is this quotes one. This is in Chinese character. This is English. So I got this from a library. And so Korean government, the king approved the school Yugyong-Gongwon. This is in Korean, which means Royal College. So that Royal College, it has a lot of meanings. This was the first U.S.-Korea joint project. And the Korean government asked through State Department to send 3 teachers from the United States to Korea. So U.S. Education Commissioner at the time, John Eaton, who was the classmate of Dr. Hulbert's father, Calvin Hulbert, in Dartmouth. So he called his friend Calvin Hulbert, why don't you send one of your kids to Korea? Then Hulbert had brother Henry. Brother Henry, why should I go? So he dropped, but Dr. Hulbert, he said, oh, I will go. Because Dr. Hulbert, he was very good at geography. So during school times, he knew where Korean Peninsula was. So he knew the name of Korea. So, Korea is the farthest one country, but maybe opportunity there, so I will go there. So he volunteered. But because of political coup, this project has been postponed. So he studied at Union Theological Seminary for 2 years and dropped out 2 years later. Then arrived at Jeomul on July 4th, 1886. Coincidentally, this is U.S. Independence Day. So he arrived on this day. And school was established. This was first government-established school in Korea, regular school, Western style. the school started with 35 elite students, and September opened. Then students were all, great. The elite. In Korea, there was a special exam to be government officer. That is called 과거. So you have to pass the 과거, then you can be the later the minister. Otherwise, no way. So then the students were, 과거 passers, and also the 20 과거 passers and 15 from really Korean dignitaries, their children. So 35 studied. So very meaningful. It means the Korean king through this school, they really wanted to raise real Korean youth who can deal with foreigners in the future. It's a very meaningful school in Korean history. On the right side, this is actually Deoksu Palace. If you go to Seoul, you see Deoksu Palace. This is the wall at the time. So probably this picture, I don't know exact date, but around 1890s. And Yugyong Gongwon, the Royal College around here. So now U.S. Embassy, ambassador's residence is over here, and J.P. Morgan Chase is over here. And this was the place at the time, okay? And so very historic, picture. And this is Dr. Hulbert's own sketch of that area. It says on the top, U.S. legation over here, U.S. legation. He says, this is my house, okay? And this is Appenzeller, and this is Underwood. So this is, Baeje Hakdang, a Methodist school, and Iwa Hakdang, girls' school over here. This is Dr. Hulbert's, handwritten sketch, okay? Then, arriving in Korea on July 4th, 1886, what he did until this is a typo, 1891 should be. So 5 years what he did in Korea. This was really a period which changed Dr. Hulbert's whole life. First, he was very passionate in teaching and also studying about Korea and Korean language. He was. And fascinated by Korean history. He thought Korea has no history at the beginning, but he found Korea has good cultural heritage, and that was really invented by Koreans. So many people called Korea was Little China. Even missionaries called like that, but he opposed to that view at the time. And this is another the landmark thing for his life. He mastered Korean. If you read his book, he said, I mastered Korean language. I didn't say mastered in 4 days, but he could read and write in 4 days. And in 7 days, he said he realized Koreans are ignoring their own language, which is one of the finest languages in the world. That's what he realized in 7 days. And in 1889, he wrote Samin Pilji. This was the first Korean textbook in Korean language in Korean history. So, sorry to Koreans, but Korean first textbook was written by the foreigner. So can you believe in 3 years, can you write this in a textbook in Korean language? I'll show you later. And this 5-year period, he really devoted to educational, foundation in Korea under the King Gojong's strong patronage. So he built really trust from Gojong. And also he met lots of Korean ministers and dignitaries this time. He made a lot of friends. And he was very also sincere, loyal, youth. So King Gojong liked him and other people liked him as well. So 1891, after 5 years, his contract expired. So he's returning to United States. This is the Westgate in 1890. I got this picture from his descendant. This is the only picture left Westgate you may not remember, even though you visited Seoul. Still, this gate does not exist, but at the time it existed. So this is Westgate. This is Southgate around the time 1900, I think. I got this picture from his book, Passing of Korea, his book. And this is the first textbook, 사민필지, which means knowledge necessary for all. So Koreans at the time just knew China, Japan, and Russia. But Dr. Hulbert says, Korean people, please, open your eyes and look to Western world. And you need to know how each country is composed. So this is a book about world geography and introduction of each country, and also how the earth exists, that kind of things. And this is a preface of that book. Totally he wrote in Korean. Left at the bottom, this is, he says, Joseon Dynasty Royal College teacher Hulbert. That's what he said in Korean. If you read this paragraph, some Koreans, you can read. It says, oh, you have that great language, but why you do not use this great language? Through this, you can have sort of, emancipation from the illiteracy. So he really resented about Koreans not using Korean alphabet. So pushed Koreans to use Korean alphabet. And this part of the book, one page, so European territory part. You see that this is the England, and this is then Sweden, and also he used the color like this. At the time, he brought the crayons from United States, so he wrote, he made book like this. And after 5 years, but unfortunately, he had to return to United States after 5 years because contract expired. And so in 1892 through Europe, he had toured to Europe and went to the United States, and he settled in Janesville, Ohio. So he was the principal of Punna Military School. I thought this was big school, but this is a small school belonging to church, so don't think this is military academy. Okay, so he was there then. Again, he really, during 1.5 year period in the United States, he really missed Korea, and his friend like Appenzella, they really wanted him to come back to Korea because he was good friend with missionaries and diplomats, and he was a sort of mediator between Protestant missionaries, Methodists, and Presbyterian missionaries. So 1893, October, he went back to Korea, and who took charge of trilingual press. This is publication company of Methodist missionary association. And also he was in charge of Eastgate Church, at the time called Baldwin Church. Dongdaemun means Eastgate. So as a missionary, so first 5 years, totally teacher, although he acted as the missionary, semi-official missionary. And he helped translating Bible into Korean, making dictionary with Underwood, Appenzella. But his missionary life starts from this year, 1893. And this one, I think you saw this picture in the program. This is the far, in the middle, this is Mr. Appenzella, and this is Dr. Hulbert, and this is Mrs. Hulbert. She wears a beautiful hat. Okay. Then from now on, I will go on with say his accomplishments. But what kind of person he was? First, I can say he was the real educator. Not only he contributed a lot to Korean modern education, also he was really educator because his spirit was education is the way the country can be civilized. Then, of course, as the teacher, same as the principal, because principal at the time, no principal at the time. So teacher educational system he introduced in Korea, American system. And also there was a Hulbert textbook series. Under this series, Koreans developed textbook. So Choak-Jiji, this is another book about geography, was written by another lady missionary, but under this series. And also he was the teacher of, the principal of Teachers College. This Sansung means Seoul Teachers College. So principal of Teachers College, at the same time, educational advisor to Korean government. And also he taught later national middle school, the currently Gyeonggi. Gyeonggi was one of the most famous high schools, school. And most importantly, he instilled Koreans with the importance of education. And in one of his books, he said, education is only means for civilization and to win against Japan. This is 1906. Japan forced to sign the Protectorate Treaty in 1905. So after that, that's what he has said. And Mrs. Hulbert, people living in Seoul, they send kids to Seoul Foreign School. So Mrs. Hulbert played a role in principal of Seoul Foreign School at the time. And she also taught at Ewha University also. This is one of the pictures. He's teaching at Gyeonggi High School, at the time, National Middle School. This is his in the paragraph, his book. The third line, he's saying, there is only one answer. She must bend herself to the task of educating the people up to a point where they can prove themselves the equals of their conquerors. So really, he tried to instill the importance of education to Koreans. And this part, I'm telling you, he wrote the first Korean textbook in Korean history. Other than that, he was also linguist and strong advocate of Hangul usage. Wrote first Korean textbook and also first thesis on Hangul, Korean alphabet, in 1892. So before he going back to United States, 1891, he wrote this thesis and he contributed to Korean Repository, first magazine in Korea, Korean Repository. And he said he compared Korean language with 200 letters over the globe. I don't know this is true or not, but knowing him, I think this is true because he wrote a lot of linguistic analysis of Korean language. So then he said it is certainly one of the finest alphabets in existence. That's what he said. And of course, Hangul must bring emancipation from illiteracy in Korea. Why not use Korean? That's what he has been saying. And of course, numerous contributions to international papers. And one I found from Columbia University Library in the basement, he says he contributed an article to annual report of Smithsonian Institution in 1903. So where he concluded, the last paragraph was, Korean surpass English as a medium for public speaking. That was his conclusion. You will see. This is one of the theses comparing Korean alphabet with Chinese and Idu. Idu means another Korean language used to a long time ago. And this Smithsonian, the contribution, I found this in U.S. Antique Store, actual annual report over here. And this is the last paragraph. That's what he said. Title was the Korean language. And also, he was missionary until 1893, only say about 4 years. Because 1893, he again was hired by Korean government as the principal of a teachers college. Then, so 4 years he was the full-time missionary. Of course, even after that, he acted as the missionary, but full-time missionary is 4 years. And according to his book, he baptized a Korean who was first convert to Protestant in the church, together with Underwood. That's what he says. That was in 1887. At the time, the law, Korean law, prohibited being Christian at the time. Also, the church-wise, he established Norangjin Church. This is one of church still existing in Seoul. I think at this moment, I have to introduce a gentleman. We have among audience one gentleman, the Homer Hulbert's fourth generation, his great-grandson, Kimball Hulbert. Kimball, could you stand up, please? Okay. About the rate, applauding him, let's welcome him. Okay. Kimball, you went to this church? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So still, they really appreciate Dr. Hulbert on the foundation of this church, and he was also YMCA founder. It's Korean IMCA. That's very famous. The institution both for evangelization and also teaching many things to the people. So he also emphasized, education toward the people, not only for school kids. And as also missionary, his thinking was very unique. Later, I'll tell you what he did against Japanese attempt to colonize Korea. Then he had some conflict with, Korean American missionaries working in Korea. American missionaries, in general, they kept quiet while Japan attempted to colonize Korea. But Dr. Hulbert, he said, if missionaries wish to remain in Korea to teach Christianity, what then was Christianity to teach? It means when Korean people needed help, missionaries should support them, should help them. That's the real Christianity. That's what he has said. So this really, in terms of spirit, differentiates him from other missionaries. This is also, on Independence Day, July 4th, 1896, you can look at the number, and Independence July 4th. The service pamphlet at the time, I got this pamphlet from Columbia at the university library basement. Basement, you go there, lots of, the garbage is there, but I took this from there, okay? So very interesting, it's arrangements, Hulbert, this bunker, and Philip Jason, this Korean gentleman, and Appenzeller, and also here, Underwood gave the address like that. So all Americans, they sort of had service for independence of the United States. And he also was a musician and journalist and writer as well. Arirang, the people, Koreans, of course, Arirang. This is most famous folk song in Korea that has been sung more than several hundred years by Koreans, but it didn't have musical notes, until that time. But Dr. Hulbert, just listening to Koreans singing this Arirang, he made the musical notes, on the Arirang. He was genius. At the beginning, I thought maybe this cannot be conceivable to me, but I later found from, say, his write-ups, he was very good at music. And his daughter, Helen, also, she was a singer in Massachusetts like that. So when he was in Danvers, he really was very good at the music. So recently, Korea has Arirang Association because this is most famous folk song in Korea. And this, changed to today's Arirang, which the rhythm is faster, in the past slower, but now faster like that. Then Arirang singers, experts, they think Dr. Hulbert is the actual originator of Arirang. Unless Dr. Hulbert made the musical notes at the time, Arirang couldn't exist as today's Arirang. That's what they feel. Every year they also come to his tomb and to give bow to him. And also he was the editor of Korean Repository, first magazine, and also editor of Korea Review. After this was 1892 started. This was 1901 started. And he was founder and editor. And in Korea, the newspaper, the Independent, 독립신문, this is very famous because in 1896, as a Korean language, first Korean language newspaper, in 1896, he was the publication company of Methodist Association. So there, he helped Korean Philip Jason, you call him Sejepil in Korean. He lived in Philadelphia. So in Philadelphia, still they worship him a lot, okay? So helping the Sejepil, Philip Jason, he was big part having this first Korean newspaper, the Independent. English version, he was the actually editor, okay? And also, he wrote many books. The Search for Siberian Klondike, the Russian things, and Sign of the Jumna, The Face in the Mist. This one is a novel written in the United States when he was settled in the United States. This is about Jeju Island. I never found he went to Jeju Island, but unless you go to Jeju Island, you cannot write this kind of novel. I read this novel. And Umji the Wizard, this Korean folktale in the United States. The Mummy Bride, also, this is play. He wrote this in the United States. He has more books also written like that. This is first thesis about the Arirang. I told you, this musical notes and explaining what's going on. He was also the historian. One problem for him, he involved in too many areas. But all great, okay? In 1905, then he said, to write the history of Korea. This is the book, about 2 books, about 1,000 pages. Then this book, at the time, you could not cover current dynasty. At the time, Joseon dynasty. So as long as Joseon dynasty reigns the country, you cannot write about anything Joseon dynasty. But he got the special approval from the emperor. The King Gojong, he changed his title to emperor from 1896 because no longer he will be influenced by foreign powers. He changed his title. So Emperor Gojong gave special approval to him to write about Joseon dynasty. So this is the first comprehensive history book in Korea. Even right now, if you look at that, read that, it says many things. And 1906, he wrote The Passing of Korea. This is talking about everything, Korean culture and tradition, and the characteristics of Koreans, that kind of things. This is famous book. I read this in my college times. Then I become really intrigued, at him after reading this book. And also, too, internationally, he wrote many articles. And someone says Hermit Kingdom, Hermit Nation. The gentleman Griffiths, this American, he first named his small book about Korea. That was, Hermit Nation. But this Griffiths, he never come to Korea. He just wrote that book sitting in Japan, just listening to Japanese. So Dr. Hulbert, he strongly, says, no, it's not right expression, explaining about the Korea. So he didn't like the word hermit, And also morning come, exact translation is not morning come. This was also American used to morning come, Mr. Rowell in 1885. But exact mean Joseon dynasty. North Korea still used Joseon as a name of the nation. The morning radiance, radiant morning is proper translation. That's what he said. So if you understand this part, you are the expert on Korea, which means Dr. Hulbert really was expert on Korea and Chinese language and Korean history. And according to his book, History of Korea, he said, Daema-do, this is another island, eastern tip of Korean Peninsula toward Japan. So Japanese called Tsushima and Korean called Daema-do. So he said in this book, according to his research, this island was a dependency of Silla dynasty. This is 1,500 years ago dynasty. Okay. This book. This is the Emperor Gojong. Let's look at next page. This is the book Passing of Korea. When he wrote this in 1906, it says this book is dedicated to the Emperor of Korea and to the Korean people. That's what he has said. So in the book, in the first page was the Emperor's picture there. And next thing is really, out of his accomplishment for Korea, I think, this part, the fighting against Japanese injustice, this part is the, say, masterpiece for him, I think. In looking to modern Korean history, 1895, this year, Korean Queen Min assassinated by Japan. And 1905, there was, Japan forced Korea to sign protectorate treaty with Japan. From this time, Japan started, governing Korea. And 1907, Hague Peace Conference, I'll talk to you later. And 1910, officially Korea annexed to Japan. So 1895, 1905 is very important years. And 1907, 1910 goes like that. So when Korean queen assassinated, Gojong, couldn't sleep and couldn't really stand at the threat of Japanese. So he couldn't eat. So U.S. legation office, Underwood and Dr. Hulbert, especially Underwood played a major role for providing food so he locked a lunch box in a box and gave it to the emperor. So then he ate only that food provided by American. And at the time, I read one writing Dr. Hulbert wrote. Over here, he said he and Underwood and Avison is medical missionary. Those three went to, the king's, say, palace. So where they slept in front of the king's sleeping room and to protect the emperor from any threat. That's what he did. And from especially earlier part of 1900, he tried to denunciate Japan for Japan's colonization attempt through Korea Review, his own magazine, and international papers. And 1905, he was the emperor's special envoy visiting Theodore Roosevelt, United States President, carrying emperor's personal letter at the time. And, he came to say United States, then visited State Department and also White House. Then both White House, no, I cannot accept this. You go to State Department. They ping-ponged each other. So he couldn't deliver the letter. After Korea, protectorate treaty between Korea and Japan was signed, not signed actually, I'll tell you later. He met the State Secretary Elihu Root, Mr. Root, the State Secretary. And at the time, many things happened actually. This is very important historical issue. Dr. Hulbert, before he left for United States, he visited the American ambassador, at the time minister, legation office still, and he explained to him about his mission, because this has to be done secretly. Otherwise, Japan may kill him or rob the emperor's personal letter. Because if emperor's personal letter gets to U.S. president, although he already, his stance was pro-Japan, he might change his mind. So, so U.S. the Seoul ambassador, he said, okay, I'll help you. You go to Washington and you meet somebody like that. So I will help you meet the state secretary and the president like that. But later, Dr. Hulbert found this minister, leaked this information to Japan. And he said, the ambassador said, oh, I will send your letter through Fauci because Japan might rob this letter from him. But, he read this and gave all the information to Japan. So, Dr. Hulbert, when he arrived in the United States, he was treated so badly over here. So for next 15 years, he has been telling United States President Roosevelt administration was wrong. That was, really pro-Japan. And the reason why he says, this one is the letter from Seoul ambassador to, State Secretary Elihu Root saying, be careful with Dr. Hulbert. He's not a good man. That's what he's saying. Okay. Okay, this one is another one. And the 1905, November 17, Japan forced protectorate treaty with Korea. Then when Dr. Hulbert was in Washington, D.C., meeting all the people there, senators like that, but no senator could help him, according to him. He received a telegram from Korean Emperor Gojong, who said, I did not sign protectorate treaty with Japan. So this is null and void. That's what Emperor said. So he received this letter. He took this letter, telegram. The Korean emperor sent this telegram from China, not from Korea, because everything was watched by Japan. So he couldn't send, so sent from China. This is the State Department document. This is, you say, Department of State. And a cablegram received in Washington, December 11th, November 1905 by Hulbert. That's what he says. So he says here, null and void. That's what the null and void. That's what Korean emperor said, like that. So still, Korean scholars, they say the treaty, this is null and void. Japan has to repatriate everything and should straighten this out like that, although realistically impossible. Then this is the only proof Korea can say, look at this. Still, this is filed with U.S. State Department. Look at that. Korean emperor didn't sign, didn't approve this treaty. So that's why this is wrong. That's what he's saying. And after that, so Japan came to Korea in 1905, and they started reigning the country under the name of general residency. So, the governor general was there, Ito Hirobumi. He's very famous famous in Japan and in Korea as well, but in opposite way. Okay. And 1907, the emperor, although he maintained his title emperor, he was nominal figurehead, not even figurehead. He couldn't do anything, all reigned by Japan. Okay, and he sent envoys to Hague, where peace conference was held in 1907. Then Dr. Hulbert was appointed as the special envoy to 9 state heads, including United States and England, and asking their support to bring Korean issue onto the table in the peace conference there. So 3 Korean envoys also were appointed. They are attending on envoys, but this Dr. Hulbert was the envoy visiting state heads. So very important, his role. And he left Korea, and in Korea, whenever you talk about Hague in peace conference, we have a hero, Lee Jun. This man is very famous because he died in Hague. People say he would commit suicide. Some people say no, he died of anger. According to Dr. Hulbert's book, he died of anger. Okay, so but no proof of really how he died. So that Lee Jun is very famous. Then Lee Jun was in Seoul. The other 2 Korean envoys were not in Korea. Lee Jun couldn't get out of the country, but Japan focused only Dr. Hulbert, and they shadowed him. Private police always followed him. So Korean Lee Jun could get out of the country. Then Dr. Hulbert also went through Japan, and he went to Hague. And in Hague, he also gave a speech in Peace Club there in July 10. And then after that, he couldn't come back to Korea at the time. What Japan did toward these 4 people, the emperor, with this case, sending envoys to secretly to Hague, emperor was abdicated by Japan. So his son nominally became the emperor until 1910 for 3 years. But, actually no Korean leader at all. And Japan, 3 out of 3 Korean envoys, 1 died in Hague, 2 couldn't come back to Korea. And the Japanese court ruled the head of 3 envoys death sentence, although he was not in Korea, and remaining 2, although 1 died, remaining 2, lifetime imprisonment they sentenced to them. Japan that harsh, although they were not in Korea. So if Dr. Hulbert came to Korea, his life definitely was severely intimidated there. This one. This telegram. Just like for your taste of the looking, this is American, at the time, legation office. Now, the U.S. ambassador's the residence, okay? About 1900, this picture. This is the Korean emperor's power of attorney to Dr. Hulbert, being the envoy of Korea, the envoy of the emperor. So you can see, by virtue of the power vested in us as the emperor of Korea, things like that. So Dr. Hulbert, this, is the man who got the power pony representing Korea. 1905, he couldn't get the power of attorney visiting the United States because, at the time, approaching the emperor was not possible. All the time watched by Japanese, so he couldn't even meet him. Even this power of attorney and other 3 Korean envoys attorney, according to the Kimball's father told me, he was told by his grandfather when he was young, when he bowed to, one time he visited, he marginally got the permission visiting him, and so visited him, bowed to him. Then at the time, Korean emperor gave some stuff wrapped by some clothes. So gave it to Dr. Hulbert. So Dr. Hulbert, when you buy in Korea, you have to say head down, have head down. So you just picked up that. So he put this power of attorney inside here. But look at this, this seal, this emperor seal. This was not first written and sealed later. Just the emperor gave, blank power of attorney. So he and the emperors, the ministers, they wrote this, actually. That's why this was sealed later. If it was sealed after this was written, seal should go here on the left or bottom of over here. But this was sealed over here. So this proves that, it means like really the Korean emperor couldn't do anything at the time. This is Japanese documents. I got this from Japanese archives, government archives. 1907, Hague, the Japanese ambassador to Dutch sent this letter to their foreign minister and also Governor General in Korea, Ito Hirobumi, names like here. Then he said, 3 Koreans appeared, and Hulbert went to Paris, but that it is Hulbert who is pulling string. So Japanese thought Hulbert is doing everything over there. This part, even Korean scholars, they couldn't find exact story, what had happened at the time. But this is one of evidence Hulbert played major role, sending Korean envoys to Hague at the time. I just got for your reference the emperor's picture and 3 Korean envoys and this Dr. Hulbert. Okay. Lee Jun is this gentleman who is known having committed suicide. Okay. This one I brought for you. It took too long. Okay. This one I brought specially for you. This is U.S. Media, the Harper's Weekly. One reporter at the time, even this is 1907, covered Dr. Hulbert, and he compared with Stevens. He was also advisor to Korea, but he worked for Japan. So totally opposite. Dr. Hulbert never get paid for his mission. He just get paid for his expense, but never paid. I was surprised at the time about the money. So money is the issue for everybody. Then this is New York Times. Okay, Stevens actually in San Francisco, he was shot by 2 Koreans and to death, okay? So he died. After this case, 1908, Ito Hirofumi, Japanese Governor General in Korea, he was shot by An Jung-gun in Harbin in China as well. Then recently, Japan awarded Mr. Stevens a grant of $10,000 and an annuity of $840. So I do not know exact meaning of this, but $10,000 at the time, 1 ounce, anybody knows 1 ounce of gold, how much was it at the time? Actually, I look into all the gold price, then $19 at the time. So he received more than 500 ounces of gold at the time. But he was the official, his official title was advised to Korea, not recommended by Japan. So he got this much money. Poor Dr. Hulbert, he should have received more, I think. Okay. That's New York Times. And a couple of things about what he did against Japan. Of course, he fought internationally, denunciating Japanese attempt to colonize. you know, he really helped the poor. Japanese came to Korea, a lot of distortions and properties. By any means, Japan took Korean properties. So Koreans, they asked Dr. Hulbert to keep the title of their properties and sold property for a penny, and Dr. Hulbert returned the property on demand later. And also Dr. Hulbert proposed to Ito Hirofumi, Japanese Governor General, if you treat Koreans fairly in the court, I will stop denunciating Japan internationally. So he proposed it to Ito Hirofumi, but he didn't listen. And also the Japanese minister came to Korea, and he asked for the stone pagoda at the time that was located in Kaesong, currently North Korea. Then, but he, without approval, he took the stone pagoda to Japan. So Dr. Hulbert blamed him through all the newspapers in the States. This is one of a picture Dr. Hulbert filed with U.S. Senate in 1919. That's why I brought this. And this is it says title of Korean properties, asking to change the title to Hulbert, Koreans. This is also New York Herald reports about Ito Hirofumi. Please quit persecuting Koreans. That's what Dr. Hulbert. This is stone pagoda Japan took to Japan. Later, this returned to Korea because Dr. Hulbert really voiced out internationally. Beautiful pagoda. Now in Yongsan, the museum, Seoul Central Museum. And so after 1907, he came back to United States, no other choice. And I'm sorry, and he settled in Springfield. And he had lots of lecture in the United States, West Coast and East Coast, in a Chautauqua circuit. I don't know exactly what it means, but he lectured there for a long time. And confrontation with Roosevelt, later I'll show you a report. And also, he filed the statement with U.S. Senate. And the Seungman Rhee, first Korean president, and Philip Jason, Korean name Sejepil, he worked together with him until 1945. This is the New York Times, the July 1907. After returning, from Hague, he coming back to the United States, where he had an interview with New York Times. New York Times said like this, then what he said, Koreans, sure, Korea will fight. It means he knew what the character of Koreans are. So knowing that the Koreans will never stop fighting, Japan. That's what he is saying. And this is 1915 in the New York Times, his contribution to New York Times. See, to the editor of the New York Times. So it says, President Roosevelt, you are wrong. That's what he's saying to the President Roosevelt. President Roosevelt, before he passed away, he admitted that he swapped Korea with Philippines, with Japan. That's what he confessed, according to his record. And 1919, he filed the statement with 1919, March 1st, Korea 3.1 운동. 3.1 means March 1st, 운동 movement. So there was a big uprising. The other, Hague, this kind of things, government, emperor's thing. This one is people's thing, 1919. After this, he got all the information from Korea, and he filed a statement with U.S. Senate. At the time, he got his statement notarized. This is not his signature, notarizing. And also the current congressional record of U.S. Senate. His title was, What About Korea? So what you going to do with Korea? That's what he's saying. These things happening like this. This picture I got this. This is Seungman Rhee, the first president, and Dr. Hulbert, U.S. Korea Council at the time in Ohio, the 1942. I don't know why they went to Ohio at the time. This was the picture, 1942. There was a Korean Liberty Conference in Washington, D.C., and Dr. Hulbert and Seungman Rhee stand over here. This is Dr. Hulbert's Mrs. No, not Dr. Hulbert. This is Seungman Rhee's the wife, Mrs. President at the time, very young, beautiful lady. Mm-hmm. This is another thing I brought to you. I know the time is running, but I need to explain to you about these things. In short, Emperor deposited in 1903 about $200,000. Hulbert says several different numbers, but I think close to $125,000. There was no exchange rate at the time, so based on the gold price, I calculated. So say $125,000. With 10% interest currently, that is about $2 billion. Okay, so Emperor deposited, say $125,000 exactly, at the Deutsche Asiatic Bank in Shanghai. Then 1909, he was expelled in 1907 by Japan. In 1909, he, with U.S. State Department secret police following him, he visited Korea. So Japan allowed that. So he visited Korea. So at the time, the emperor was almost in prison. He couldn't do anything. But through his nephew, emperor's nephew, he gave power of attorney and check and a deposit certificate to Dr. Hulbert and asked Dr. Hulbert to go to Shanghai and get money back. That's what he said. So that was 1909. And Dr. Hulbert couldn't get out of these papers. So at the time, American was traveling to Korea. So and there, one of his, Dr. Hulbert's sister, Mary, was there. So then Mary took out these papers to Dalian in China, northern part of China, Dalian. So where he got all the documents, and he went to Shanghai. Then going to Shanghai, Shanghai said, "Oh, money you already paid to Japan." So Dr. Hulbert said, "What's the matter? This is the emperor's private money, so why you pay to Japan?" Then they said, "Don't ask me, already paid in 1908. So he had no choice but coming back to the United States. So from that time, he started investigating this. So eventually, 1923, through the U.S. ambassador to Germany, everything was confirmed. Oh, the money went to Japan. Okay? And he tried to recover this. One thing, if you have any clue to this, he signed at the time to get the money back with Mr. Kimberland. This gentleman is Navy lieutenant, but he's from Princeton University, and signed on this. And he was a very powerful man at the time in the U.S. Washington, D.C. So, but he didn't return all the documents to Dr. Hulbert, the genuine document, check and deposit certificate. So still I'm looking for that. Then this Kimberland, Mr. Kimberland, Mr. Hulbert fought in the Washington, D.C. on the street. Give it to me. No, I can't give you like that. Then what he said in the letter I found from Mr. Kimberland to Dr. Hulbert, documents are well safe kept in one of New York banks. Then his son worked for Chase Manhattan Bank at the time. So probably the documents still maybe in Chase Manhattan Bank. I don't know. So I sent the letter to Chase, but I didn't have any response back from them. But so if you find any clue, because that's very important. And Mr. Hulbert, at the age of 1945, is almost 82. Korea was liberated, so he communicated to Seungman Rhee everything, and he left the fact of statement of fact, and gave that statement of fact to Seungman Rhee, left. So Korea has the war 1950, so Korea couldn't follow up this. So I found his documents, they slept in Korean archives for 50, 60 years. So I found several years ago through archives in old dusty covered but I found these documents there. So still, this is live issue between Korea and the United States. I'm sorry, between Korea and Japan. This is the emperor's the personal, writing and power of attorney giving to some people will understand this. Deutsche Bank, American Hulbert, okay, and 1909, October 20th, gave power of attorney to Dr. Hulbert to go to Shanghai. And this is the receipt. The Deutsche Asiatic Bank, the CEO came to Korea, and in Seoul he signed this receipt, this one. And the money went to Japan in 1908, but this is another receipt translated by American Embassy in Berlin. It says, check was received from the German General Consul, Consul General, 1908, April 22nd, by Japanese minister, Nabeshima. This is gentleman who received this. So he received this, but he just talked to Prime Minister of Korea at the time, Lee Wan-yong. Lee Wan-yong was the arch trader of Korea. All Koreans know he sold the country to Japan. And that Lee Wan-yong is very also a special guy. Lee Wan-yong was the one of Dr. Hulbert's students in Royal College in 1886. So at the time, within 1 year, he could speak English. So Dr. Hulbert, he said he was a very good guy, but later he changed his mind. He changed it totally, his philosophy, for money. That's what he said. When he had interviews in New York Times, in detail, he talked about Lee Wan-yong. Then this Japanese minister just left the report to Lee Wan-yong, Prime Minister. He was the puppet, and he didn't do anything. So he said, I'll exchange this money with you guys. That's what he said. But, why he received by check, Deutsche Bank, currently, I think Mizuho Bank, I think the Deutsche Bank, currently bank. So, and after that, Dr. Hulbert, this is a letter from Dr. Hulbert to Syngman Rhee, a president, and he says, stolen money must be returned with interest. That's what he's saying at the bottom over here. That's what he's saying. But Korea couldn't follow up this. So I, first noted this in 1898 in Rye, New York, with Kimball's father. From him, I got this news, and from that time, I followed these whole papers, and eventually my book, in Crusade of Korea, very in detail, I covered this story, and exactly how much it is like that I did. So then money, still live issue. Last year, after my publication, many Korean associations, they coming to me, let's work together to get the money back internationally. So even to me, by getting money back from Japan, we can pay off the emperor's resentment and Dr. Hulbert as well on this stolen money. Dr. Hulbert really wanted money get back to Korea, and also emperor, without any response, he passed away. I'm sorry. So 1948, Korean government also officially formed 1945, liberated, and Syngman Rhee became first Korean president, and at the time invited Dr. Hulbert to come to Korea. But his wife was ill, so he couldn't come. So next year, 1949, Dr. Hulbert came to Korea from San Francisco. Whenever he first, come to Korea, also from New York, San Francisco, Yokohama, Nagasaki, and Busan, and Jeomulpo, Incheon, like that. Same way he took, 1949, in 40 years. So, he said to AP correspondent, okay, how do you comment? So I would like to bury it in Korea, then in Westminster Abbey. That's what he said. I saw this paragraph even before this time, but clearly he talked to the AP. So AP, telegrammed like this. And arrived July 29th for August 15 celebration. But, after a week after arrival, on August 5th, he passed away in Korea. So, in a sense, his dream came true. He wanted to be buried in Korea. So, if he passed away in the United States, probably still in the United States, okay? And his, funeral service well done, and he buried at Yanghwajin Mapo Foreign Cemetery. And next year, 1950, he was given a special Country Foundation medal from Korean President Syngman Rhee. This is, at the time, Appenzela's daughter at the hospital. I got this picture from his descendant, okay? President Lee is addressing in the, at the funeral. And several words I should say to you about here. The above, the top, the sentence, paragraph, this means I got this from Dartmouth College. He attended 50th anniversary homecoming day to Dartmouth, 1934. And he had my life story. He left memo, probably school, asked him to write something. So my life story. So where he says this, I have been fighting for the rights and liberties of 18 million, I'm sorry, this typo, of 18 million people whose love I hold as my most precious possession, and whatever the outcome, I deem that loyalty to such a cause is worthwhile. This really means he loved Korea, and always I stand for Korea, Korean people always until I die. He left many, the magnificent words, throughout Korean. And also, he compared the Koreans at the beginning. Koreans neither good merchants like Chinese nor good fighters like Japanese. They are far more like Anglo-Saxons in temperament, he has said. Okay, and many things he said. This is a Portland newspaper saying, "I'll fight for until I die. I love." That's what he said. This is his love of Korea life. And then how Koreans view him? Of course, Emperor. Dr. Hulbert is, I shouldn't say only, but Dr. Hulbert is the man I can trust the most. Okay? And An Jung-geun, some Americans you may not know, but An Jung-geun is in Korea a real hero because he assassinated the Japanese Ito Hirofumi, Governor General in Harbin in 1909. But even An Jung-geun, when he was interrogated by Japanese prosecutor, who you respect the most? That kind of question was raised to him by Japanese prosecutor. Then he said, of course he said many Koreans. And one foreigner, he indicated, I really respect Dr. Hulbert, who was the real benefactor who truly loved Korea. That's what he said. At the time, his age of late 20s. So it means among Korean elites, Dr. Hulbert was really treated greatly at the time. And he's the best icon of human character. And also last year, after my book publication of my book, the government sponsored a symposium on him, particularly on his contribution to Korean alphabet. So Seoul National University, Lee Han-byok, this famous linguist professor, he said, General MacArthur saved Korea from communism. Dr. Hulbert really listed Korea, the Joseon, on the list of civilized race by his studying and introducing Korean language to worldwide. That's what he said. So many people say too many things. This was the emperor's personal letter, the same handwriting. You can see this emperor's handwriting, this the English, and you cannot see this, the dear friend Hulbert, that the emperor. This seal is unique in existence. National treasure right now. And just the last part, he has 5 children, Helen, I'm sorry, Helen, Madeline, Sheldon, William, Leonard. So here, William is the Kimball's grandfather, and this Sheldon, 1 year, 2-year-old, he died in Seoul, so he buried in Seoul Foreign Cemetery together, not together, but the same place with his father, all born in Seoul. This is later, I think, golden wedding anniversary. This is the picture of Dr. Hulbert, okay? I'm sorry. Over here, this gentleman is Kimball's father, and this is, Dr. Hulbert, his wife. This lady, Helen's daughter, Madeline and Judy, they are still living in Long Island right now. They are age of 90. His mother, Helen, passed away in 1987. So 2 ladies now living in Long Island. I'll visit them tomorrow. Okay. And this very interesting letter. This letter to his mom in 1886. Here, Seoul, Korea, November 1886. What did he say? My mother? What grandmother? Yeah. And I'm just a couple of minutes, I'm going to introduce Hulbert Memorial Society. So I, with 4 other my colleagues established, Memorial Society in 1999, because I thought this gentleman should be, respected by people, and his accomplishment should be recognized by history. So foreigners' history, also Korean history, as long as it is related to Korea. But the Korean history books very lightly cover foreigners' accomplishment. So my eventual point, we research about his life and recover his life, and evaluate properly and record his accomplishments in Korean history books. That's the thing we can pay back to him for his appreciation. So for this purpose, established this, and activities, we are doing memorial service every August 5th, his passing anniversary, and symposium and lectures. And also, Kimball was invited to Korea once, and 2 other descendants also invited. 3 times we invited families. We also support financially independent, descendants also. And his name, I'll show you later. A lot to do also. One good news is Seoul city government is going to establish a Korean alphabet landmark in the Seoul central part. So where I'm proposing to have Dr. Hulbert's statue there, because Dr. Hulbert's the first one after inventor of Korean alphabet, King Sejong, who really appreciated Korean alphabet. So they are reviewing right now. If they do not erect, I may have big fight, so you understand that. So originally, when we established Memorial Society, this is his tomb. Over here, Koreans, no name over here, Dr. Hulbert. So because Seungman Ri's handwriting should be supposed to be inscribed over here, but were like this. So he has been empty for 50 years. I'm sorry. Oh, 50 years. So later you will see. And this is familiar face over here. Ms. Hulbert, Thomas Hulbert, ambassador, who attended memorial service once. I really thank him. He was very, attentive my activity, and he appreciated me, my doing this. And he sent me a letter. He himself attended. He sent wine for Christmas, so something like that. Not for that reason I respect him. Okay. You can find some familiar face. This is Kimball, 55th anniversary, and this is another gentleman sitting over here, Mr. Fallon. Actually, my relationship Kevin was my boss in JP Morgan Chase, and also Ro was my big boss in JP Morgan Chase. So I'm having two bosses over here. So I'm trembling. All right. And you look at that. This is new handwriting field inscribed. This is President Kim Dae-jung's handwriting at the time. I had this. Okay. This is Crusade for Korea, my book. My book was Book of the Month for August last year. Really, thank you for your time. This too much it took, but really, thank you for your time again. Okay. Okay. All right.
First of all, I can't remember him ever trembling at anything I ever did, so that's not true. But in prepping for this this evening's lecture, I think I deleted every site on the internet that mentions Hulbert's name. So I have some background, and it is very interesting that while you go through a lot of other names at the same time, this is just not there, and someone didn't like him, I guess, or it's a very interesting phenomenon. I must have gone to people who visited Korea, had made travels, come from outside, done all this stuff, not a word. And the guy was there clearly doing something that was very important among the foreign community and the Korean community. And he just did not get the airtime then that he is now. So, DJ, thanks very much. It's a pleasure to have you with us. We've got some more snacks back there, so DJ will be around here. If anyone would like to ask him a particular question, please do so. And we really do appreciate your coming out tonight in the rain and with traffic the way it is. Thanks again.
Thank you.